Good afternoon, everyone. It's Pablo Zuanic, Cannabis Equity Analyst at Zuanic and Associates. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We have a panel today to discuss the advocacy for the hemp industry and hemp derivatives in particular. And we're very pleased to introduce three notable speakers here to this panel. Before we jump in and make an introduction, I want to say something here. I mean, obviously, my legacy is in cannabis. As an equity analyst, we've covered the sector for about 7 years. We cover the industry globally, right? Companies in Israel, Australia, Germany, Colombia, Canada, and the US, of course. And we're very active in the space. And most of the investors that we talk to participate through cannabis stocks. That said, obviously, the hemp industry is very relevant. And we think it's important for cannabis investors to understand what's happening with the hemp industry. We are seeing more cannabis companies participating in hemp, like I mentioned, Camino, Kiva, Curaleaf, Wana. Recently, Incredibles, it's a license to a company, LFTD Partners, that we cover, by the way. So there's more cannabis companies participating in hemp. Boris Jordan from Curaleaf has even said that at some point, maybe the two industries could lobby together at the state level and federal level. I don't know if that's wishful thinking, but perhaps there's an opportunity there. But again, that's the angle we are coming from here. Obviously, we try to do very unbiased, objective work. We try to put all the cards on the table when we talk to investors. So I'm going to introduce our three speakers here. It's Christopher Lackner, President and CEO of the Hemp Beverage Alliance. J.D. McCormick, Chairman of the American Healthy Alternatives Association, and Jonathan Miller, General Counsel of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. Welcome to all of you.
Thanks so much.
So, Jonathan, I'll start with you. If you can just introduce yourself and tell us about your organization. And again, thank you for being here.
Sure. I'm Jonathan Miller. I'm a recovering politician. I was the state treasurer of Kentucky for 2 terms. I ran for governor, and the people of Kentucky overwhelmingly decided that I should be in the private sector. I've been practicing law for 13 years now. I lead the hemp practice group at Frost Brown Todd, and a little over a decade ago, I helped start the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, which for over a decade has been the industry's leading business advocacy organization, a 501c4. We've been lobbying on behalf of the industry at the federal level, 2014 Farm Bill, 2018 Farm Bill, and all the nonsense going on now, as well as in dozens of states.
J.D., please. Thank you.
Hey, J.D. McCormick. I'm the chairman and founder of the American Healthy Alternatives Association. Like Jonathan Miller, we advocate in Washington, D.C., and in dozens of states all over the country, and famously have worked on bills that passed in Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and kind of all over the country. But thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel.
Thank you. And Chris?
All right. Hopefully this is working. You can hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm Christopher Lackner. I'm the president of the Hemp Beverage Alliance. We are a 501c6 trade association representing the hemp beverage industry. We've got about 200 members in the United States and Canada. And as of last week, we may have one from England. So we represent the hemp beverage industry, developing best practices, advocating for the category, and trying to get this whole hemp business regulated the right way.
Great. Thank you for that. So look, we have a lot to cover, and we'll do that in less than an hour, hopefully. JD, I'll start with you. Let's talk about the industry relevance, right? If you can give us some numbers or data to size up the U.S. industry, make the economic, political case. Let's start with that.
Yeah, there's 2 conflicting reports. One that shows just over 2 billion, closer to 3 billion in national sales. And then the Whitney Economics that shows 28 billion in total sales. Now, that is a wide range, but I'll tell you just in personal experience and talking to business owners, hundreds of retailers all over the country, many hemp retailers in states like Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, North and South Carolina are doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales at the retail level a month, many millions of dollars in sales a year. There are some stores that I've had personal experience in talking to that are doing more than $250,000. Some are doing $500,000 a month in sales in some of these markets. And so if you look at the data sets and you look at the work that's been done, I really believe the Whitney Economics Report is the more accurate of the two. Now, this is hard to do because you're extrapolating data all across the United States. These reports are not easy. You have to interview hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of business operators. But companies like Mood or 3Chi that have done millions and millions in sales, Lifted Made is publicly traded, doing millions of dollars in sales. There are thousands of companies that manufacture, produce, and distribute these products on top of the tens of thousands of retailers all over the United States. Just in the state of Florida alone, it might be a little bit under 10,000 now, but at one point there were over 10,000 registered hemp retailers in the state of Florida. Several hundred farmers, several hundred distributors, and several hundred manufacturers just in one state. So, I don't think the $2.8 billion number is accurate. I think that is wildly underestimating the size of the industry. And I think that if you really speak to some of these business owners, the grassroots, the retail level operators, they're doing significant sales. So,
do we have an estimate of what percent of the total hemp harvested goes to what we would call psychoactive hemp derivative products?
So I don't have the Whitney Economics Report right in front of me, but I would say the vast majority of it, 90%, 85%, somewhere in that ballpark, the vast majority. In fact, one of the largest raw material suppliers in the United States, he produces crude oil in South Carolina, is actually traveling internationally because they're running out of hemp biomass in the United States. So they need to go elsewhere internationally to find more raw material, what we call hemp biomass. They need to go internationally to find it. So if that can help illustrate, I think the vast majority of hemp produced in the United States is being used for these products.
Thank you for that. So, Chris, do you have an estimate for total hemp-based drink sales and how much of that would be what we would call, psychoactive? Any leading brands in that space you're going to talk about?
Yeah, and I think this is going to have to amplify what JD is saying about the numbers are still very hard to quantify. One, because it's a brand new market and the systems aren't really in place to track it appropriately. We've been getting several inquiries from several reputable sources wanting to create that data. But right now we are kind of really just looking at on the ground data like JD was saying. But what I can say is this, one of our partners is a company called Top 10 Liquors up in Minnesota. They've got 14 liquor stores. It's a 14-store chain in the state. And the numbers coming out of that liquor chain alone are crazy, particularly given the age and the newness of this product and the limited advertising that comes with it. But we're talking about 15% of the top 10 products that are sold at that liquor store are THC beverages. And when Top 10 Liquors opened up their new location in Stillwater, Minnesota this summer, THC represented 15% of the sales. So people are coming into new liquor stores, new chains, and they're coming for THC beverages. And I think that's something that is very ground changing when it comes to the adult beverage category. When we talk about, leaders in the category, again, it's a very small industry right now relative to other, conventional CPG. There isn't a Budweiser or a PepsiCo out there quite yet, but we are seeing a lot of national and international brands really beginning to eke their way out. I think we're all very familiar with companies like Cann, which has, been one of the trailblazers. But our board of directors at HBA, for instance, has companies like Cheech and Chong or Rebel Rabbit, Cycling Frog, Mary Jones Soda, Happy, North Canna, Cantrip. These are all names that you're going to see on shelves across the country as this industry grows.
And in terms of the distribution, it's mostly through liquor stores and bars in some states compared to, say, vapes, edibles, hemp flower that are sold through vape shops and smoke shops?
Correct. We're in the adult beverage industry. We're in the heavy can of water business, and conventional alcohol distributors seem to understand that and take to it better. Our products are big, they're bulky, and they're heavy, and so they need to be marketed and staged in appropriate places where they can handle that. And that's why we've been finding that liquor stores and age-gated grocery are good places for it.
Thank you. So, Jonathan, moving the discussion now to the federal legality of the product, right? So, if you don't mind, and again, the question here is because some people are not so familiar with the space in terms of hemp products. Make the case for what we call psychoactive hemp derivatives being federally legal, despite what the FDA and DEA may or may not have said on the subject.
Well, the 2018 Farm Bill legalized hemp, and specifically legalized hemp's cannabinoids, derivatives, and extracts. Those are three fancy words that describe products that are made from the hemp plant. They are legal as long as they are less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC on a dry weight basis. And so products that fit that definition, that have less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC on a dry weight basis are federally legal. And there have been some challenges in courts, and two circuit courts have already declared that it is true that products, even if they are impairing, that fit that description are federally legal. Now, there are efforts undergoing in any number of states to try to restrict or ban adult products, but the industry is pretty united to fight against those bans.
Yeah, and just staying on that point, I remember back in the day at 2018, 2019, doing a lot of work on the CBD industry, right? Because we saw a big boom there, didn't last very long. But since then, we began to see this growth in what we call psychoactive hemp derivative products, right? In your opinion, did the framers or the sponsors of the 20 Farm Bill envisage this type of products?
I don't think we were aware of them. I know we weren't aware of them at the time of the 2018 Farm Bill. I was deeply involved in those negotiations. But the law got written as it is, and the law could not be more clear in how it defines what's legal and what's not legal. So it's clear that for the time being, these products are fairly legal.
Yeah. And one more question there. So while more states are legalizing THC cannabis, right, 24 now for recreational use, more states are banning what we call psychoactive hemp derivatives. I mean, is this statement true? And if so, why the contrast?
Some are. We've seen some efforts by some legislatures. Some governors have been trying to take executive action, such as in Missouri and California. The Missouri one got beaten back by the industry. The California one, we're in a court trying to reverse those emergency regulations. But other states are protecting these products. Florida had passed some negative legislation, and thanks to the work of J.D. McCormick and his group, the governor DeSantis vetoed that. So it really is kind of a mixed bag. Why is this going on? The leading effort, the efforts are being led by a small group of monopolist marijuana companies who view hemp as competition, and who blame some of their problems in terms of challenges that they've been facing as an industry on hemp and adult hemp products. And our philosophy is we want to work closely with all folks to lift all boats. And as you mentioned at the outset, there are marijuana companies such as Curaleaf, one of our members, who is selling hemp products. So I do think that it is possible to coexist, but that message has not gotten into certain boardrooms yet.
Thank you. JD, I mean, if you can try to make a contrast, in your opinion, in terms of the nature and the structure of the THC cannabis industry versus the hemp, psychoactive hemp derivatives industry.
I think you have to look at this in its totality, going all the way back to 1998. The Compassionate Use Act, when first passed, was designed to give cancer patients in California the right to try marijuana as something to help them through chemotherapy, as a treatment, as something to help treat some of their side effects of chemo. Now, years on from that, we're now getting close to 30 years on from that. What has happened is that limited license, limited access model has been and right was liberal in the country. They thousands of retail licenses and hundreds of manufacturing licenses. They kept it small because the intent was for medical patients to try marijuana. Well, beyond that, as the greater market saw the need for expanding the medical program in the early 2010s, the recreational marijuana or adult use markets, expansions, these have all evolved from that first step, which is limited licensure and limited access. So if you look at it through that framework, now you understand the 2018 Farm Bill did the exact opposite. It said there are no regulations. Anybody can sell it as many instances as you can shake a stick at, and over are licensed to sell hemp in the state of Florida. And so you've got these two contrasting models. One is a free market capitalism, capitalistic structure. The other is limited licensure, top-down, heavy regulations, extremely high barrier to entry. And now, believe me, I am for the plant broadly. I really, truly am. My girlfriend has epilepsy. I live this reality every day, and I would like to see the plant more broadly accessible by consumers. But if you look at the two different structures, one necessarily evolved from a limited licensure, limited access program. The other exploded because of the free market and just federal legality in general.
Right. But just to follow up there, a couple of things. So first of all, is it true that only states with no recreational cannabis have big, psychoactive hemp derivative markets? I mean, Texas,
Absolutely.
Florida, North Carolina. Is that true? And what does that
mean? Absolutely not. Probably the best example of this is the state of Illinois.
Right.
Recreational cannabis market. Some of the largest recreational marijuana operators in the country exist in Chicago. They exist in Illinois. You also have thousands and thousands of hemp retailers, distributors. Some of the largest distributors in the United States in the hemp space are based in Chicago. It is not mutually exclusive. They can both coexist. Now, certainly, I think to Jonathan Miller's point, some operators in the marijuana space blame the hemp industry for lower sales volumes, lower margins. But I think, like in any market, competition is a good thing. It will breed ingenuity and change and consumer driven and consumer focused product offerings. I think so many of those things are relevant in the state of Illinois, and there's other states. Maryland, I think Maryland has a recreational market. They attempted to get rid of the hemp market. The hemp operators in the state of Maryland filed a lawsuit and defended themselves, and now the two are coexisting. So I think it really depends on the market, but it is not true that in a recreational market, hemp cannot survive or vice versa.
Thank you. And just one quick follow-up there. If that's the case, right, and I hear you, of course, why would the hemp industry be against Florida recreational sales, right? They've been very active in being against Yes on 3.
So I love this question. I can't wait to publicly air this out. So if you look historically, and you look back in 2016, 2018, and efforts in the medical marijuana space in Florida, if inevitably what pops up is the limited licensure model, right? Extremely limited licenses, high barriers to entry. And if you go and look at all the lobbyists that are registered under many of these marijuana operators in the state of Florida, there are dozens upon dozens of marijuana lobbyists in the state of Florida. And so if you think that the limited licenses and the monopolistic privileges of some of these companies, if you think that Tiger is going to change their stripes after they get recreational marijuana, I would argue that the opposite is true. They're going to double, triple, and quadruple down. They're going to be emboldened by market forces They're going to say, okay, we've got constitutional protection. Now let's double and triple our lobbying efforts. Let's solidify our monopolistic goals here, and let's push out anybody else that's interested in operating in this space. Famously, there are only 22 licenses in the marijuana space in the state of Florida. We are the third largest state in the United States with the 14th largest economy in the world. And yet there are only 22 licenses in existence in the marijuana space in Florida. That is outrageous. Outrageous. And they're vertically integrated licenses. So any small business owner that only has 50 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand even, they cannot operate in the marijuana space in the state of Florida. You would need a complete sea change, a legislative sea change. And I just don't see that happening. If you're reading the tea leaves, the Republican Party of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, are against recreational marijuana. If it passes, I don't see them just saying, okay, doors wide open. Let's open up licenses to hundreds and hundreds of small businesses. Let's increase participation tenfold. Let's get these consumers all the marijuana they want. I don't see that happening in reality. So I think if you think about the implementation bill that will follow if it passes, I think there's going to be a lot of different forces in Tallahassee working the issue. And I just don't think that the small businesses or the consumers win in that situation.
Okay, thank you for that. Chris, I'm going to ask you a couple of follow-up questions here. First of all, what about the arguments that people make? And again, remember, I'm coming here from an agnostic point of view, unbiased. What about the arguments that people make against psychoactive hemp derivatives as these being synthetic products, that they include components and additives not derived from hemp and generally unsafe? Any comments on that?
Well, when we talk about the beverage category in particular, and that's kind of where my area of expertise is, so I don't want to, I don't know how a vape works and I don't know how to make a gummy. But when we talk about beverage, we are talking about naturally derived hemp products, right? So whether these products are using a converted cannabinoid process where you take one cannabinoid and convert it into another, or whether you're using that naturally available THC, which is found in small quantities in the plant. But I think that we do, we get into this science is scary kind of thing when we talk about conversions and synthetics or whatever. I can say to everybody and give a good scare that our products are 99.9% dihydrogen monoxide, right? That's water, right? But when framed as a scary thing, it all of a sudden, raises the hackles of people. But for the most part, the products that are being made in the marketplace now, in particular beverages, go through very strict processes for the manufacturing and the creation and the testing of these emulsions. They're using methods for conversion that are found in, gazillions of products that we're already consuming. And so I think that we do need to take a step back and just kind of recognize that when we're talking about hemp-derived products, overwhelmingly we are talking about products that are derived from hemp. I don't know of anybody that's using a biosynthetic or any other methodology to create these products.
Okay, thank you. Look, a general question for the three of you, if you want to chip in here. Do you have any comments? Have you seen the Rob Rosen documentary, High Stakes? And would you have any comments on it? Just briefly, if I may. Any one of you, if you want to comment.
I took a very brief look at it this morning. That was the first that I had seen it or heard it. I think what it is I think one of the things that we do need to do as an industry is continue to push the educational aspect of this category. I think that there's a lot of concern, as I said, that people are throwing words out with actually not knowing how they're defined, not recognizing how these products are actually manufactured, not recognizing that the molecules that we're using are the same molecules that the marijuana industry is using, and using the same testing facilities that the marijuana industry is testing. So I think there is a lot of confusion out there. I think a lot of it is being sowed by people, but I think there's also just an educational gap that we all have an obligation to fill as we move forward.
Thank you. I want to move the discussion now to state level details, the landscape at the state level. So Jonathan, describe where states stand on psychoactive derivatives. Maybe this is a bit of a simplistic classification, but I would put it in three buckets. 100% blanket bans, a regulated industry, and then what we would call in some cases a Wild West states with no regulations at all. First of all, is that classification correct? And then if you can just talk about some of the major states where they would fit in.
Sure, and the thing with the second bucket where there's regulations, the largest bucket, you're going to have considerable variance between those. So it really is it is a 50 state, 50 different set of rules right now, which is one of the reasons why we're pushing so hard for legislation on the federal level, such as the Ron Wyden bill, which we can talk about later if you like. But it is rarer to see states completely ban these products. Arkansas has tried that, and it is met with a lawsuit. There are some states that have defined hemp so minusculely that it functions as a virtual ban. Virginia is one of those states where there are a couple products that can be sold in Virginia, but the vast majority cannot. California is looking to try to be the next state to issue a complete ban. They have in emergency regulations. We have sued them. The U.S. Roundtable has sued them. We're filing our temporary restraining order very soon. There should be a hearing sometime this week, and we're hopeful that that will be reversed. So I think the growing trend is more regulation, and we're battling state by state to make sure that regulation is fair and incorporates all the products that folks are enjoying out there. But again, ultimately, we're hoping to have a federal solution in the next 12 months.
Right, and then just before we go to the federal side, go on. Go
yeah,
ahead.
if I can jump in, so just to talk about some of the states where there are good regulations in place, to highlight some of those states. Florida, famously, I think, has probably some of the best regulations in the country. Some may argue that. Tennessee also has some very good regulations that are being stood up as we speak. Now, inevitably, in all of these markets, there's going to be, what we'll call consternation or headaches to the regulatory process, but that's the nature of regulation. Georgia just passed a great hemp bill that I think may produce some great regulations. I think if you look at the bill that almost passed in North Carolina, many would agree that's some of the best cannabis, regardless of hemp or marijuana definitions, some of the best cannabis legislation in the United States. I think if we sat down and we looked at all 50 states, we could very easily put them all in different buckets. But I think some of the best regulations in the country are the ones I just mentioned.
Right. And Jonathan, in terms of those states where there's been bans, call them partial bans or total bans, are they actually being enforced?
That's a great question. We saw Missouri try to issue their governor without approval of the legislature, tried to issue a ban in that state, and they started enforcing upon it. They raided a VFW, a Veterans of Foreign Wars facility, and that was probably the best thing that ever happened to the hemp industry, because it got people who really matter in this society, our veterans, to demonstrate that this was a bad move by the governor. And so we haven't seen extensive enforcement, but we see it here and there, and are again trying to hope to focus these states more on regulation than on bans.
Right. And Chris,
I have a great example.
Go on.
This one's going to be for you, Pablo. The state of New York saw a series of raids. Something like 800 retailers were raided in the state of New York under the guise of illegal marijuana dispensaries. And that's been happening in Manhattan, upstate New York, for the last several months. As we dug into this in the state of New York, we found that actually they were misapplying the marijuana laws and raiding legal licensed hemp operators with SWAT teams and AR-15s and bulletproof vests running into these hemp retailers and claiming that they're selling illegal marijuana products. So certainly there are examples of really negative enforcement actions, and often it's confusion on the part of agencies, law enforcement. I use this statement pretty frequently. We are coming out of a 100-year prohibition. And in coming out of that 100-year prohibition, to Chris's well-made point, there needs to be a massive education campaign, not just for the consumers and the business owners, but for government agencies and law enforcement who are misapplying what are potentially criminal laws to legal operators.
Just to follow up on that point, Chris, for you, using your definition, right, and your terminology, what is Gavin Newsom getting wrong, and what is DeSantis getting wrong? I'm using your words here, but Chris.
Well, I would say that Governor Newsom did a few things wrong. And the one thing that, again, he just kind of got over his skis on this. I think there was a knee-jerk reaction to a perceived problem that wasn't there. And what we've been saying in states like Illinois, Missouri, anywhere where these come into discussion is just slow down and bring all the stakeholders together and really have a conversation about what are real issues and what are fabricated issues, and more to the point, what are really good opportunities here. I think that the governor's decision was hasty and probably did not take into account the full 360 view of the category. And so we're very hopeful that everybody's going to be able to take a deep breath and kind of come to the table and really just kind of suss out the reality versus the fiction when we talk about what's going on in California.
Thank you. So, Jonathan, let's move the discussion now to future potential federal level legislation. Maybe explain to us the key features in the Wyden bill, and I believe that Senator Ron Paul also proposed something different. If you can walk us through that, please.
Sure. So the Wyden bill, the Cannabinoid Safety and Regulation Act, would approach the hemp industry and hemp product industry with robust regulation as opposed to misguided prohibition. It would ensure that products are appropriately age gated, and so that they aren't sold to children or anyone under the age of 21. It would ensure that there was transparent labeling, consistent across the country, so you don't have to have a different label for every state, that provides transparency and accuracy when it comes to what's in the product. That it would ensure that the packaging is not counterfeit or deceptive or otherwise attractive to kids. And it would ensure the provision of good manufacturing practices, so applying the rules that the FDA has for other similar supplement products to hemp products. And so it is a work in progress. There's still this bill is not going to get passed this year. It's out there to spark dialogue and discussion. We're looking forward to getting people's input, but are hopeful next year we'll be able to hit the ground running, and this can be something that all sides will embrace as a strong compromise to promote good regulation of these products.
Can you talk about what type of feedback you're getting so far, or support from both sides of the aisle?
Yeah. So the bill was launched on last Wednesday. Senator Wyden spoke to a group that the Roundtable gathered at the U.S. Capitol. Our group, we had about 35 of our members in. We did a fly-in and met with several dozen Senate staffers across the footprint, and got a whole lot of positive feedback, both from people that are conservative and want to limit products that might be impairing, as well as people who are dying to see more regulation, or frustrated that the FDA has not acted to this point. So we're cautiously optimistic that this is going to be, again, this is not the final product, but this is going to be the framework for us moving forward.
Right, and just one follow up there. the way I understand, I mean, reading the bill is that the FDA would have oversight, right? And the FDA has had a very, what I would call very stern opinion on psychoactive hemp derivatives. I mean, and if the FDA is going to have oversight, they could pretty much ban the category. I mean, do you agree with that interpretation, or am I wrong?
No. This bill leaves the decisions in terms of how to treat the products with different levels of intoxication to the state. So the FDA's role would be here to regulate, to make sure these products are manufactured safely, not to issue any bans.
Right. And look, this is going to be a question for you, Jonathan, but please, Chris and JD, feel free to jump in. Any predictions on the new farm bill? Is it going to be this year, next year, and how it may deal with this category, right? We have status quo as a scenario, stays the same, passes it back to the states. Do we have the Mary Miller Amendment, or do we have new regulations akin to the Wyden bill? Jonathan, I'll start with you.
Sure. So the Mary Miller Amendment is on the House bill now, but just last week, Congressman G.T. Thompson, who chairs the House Agriculture Committee, let it be known that a number of his members felt betrayed or misled by some of the anti-hemp folks that were lobbying in Congress, and he does not believe that the Mary Miller Amendment will survive into the Farm Bill. I think, and again, when our meeting's over on the Senate side, there is no appetite to ban products like the Mary Miller Amendment wants. Will there be a farm bill at all? I probably give it a 20% chance by the end of the year. Maybe I'm even being too generous. Most people think they're too far apart and they're going to wait till next year. But you get into this lame duck session after Congress gets back, and anything can happen. So it is possible we'll have a farm bill, but I'm quite optimistic that it will not have the Mary Miller language in it.
Yeah, and to be clear, Jonathan, you can clarify this. The House version didn't go up to a floor vote, right? It just passed out of committee.
Correct.
So it hasn't really moved that far on the House. I mean, it's moved out of committee, but there hasn't been a floor vote on that. We know that Senator Stabenow out of Michigan is driving the ship on the Senate side for the farm bill, and she's made very clear what her wants and needs are that are overarching well beyond what the hemp category is looking for. Right. That said, we've been hearing 50-50 chance that something could happen this year in lame duck, but I don't know how that 50-50 chance is calibrated. I think a lot's going to have to do with what happens in early November with the elections and some of the decisions that get made strategically and politically for that capacity. So, I think it's a coin toss and then an interpretation of the coin toss.
Jonathan, is there room for the Wyden bill to be incorporated into a farm bill?
I think so. Next year, if it does, if the farm bill does go into next year, then potentially the Wyden language could get into a farm bill. The chance of it happening this year is quite small. I mean, I guess again, there's always the opportunity something's going to happen, but again, Senator Wyden really did feel like this needs some time to percolate and get people's input.
Right.
And one of the things to consider is that the way that this gets through efficiently, if it were to happen this year, is that it has to be nice and tidy and not throw any curveballs to anybody late in the game. And so I can't imagine the Miller Amendment or the Wyden bill being introduced in any kind of short-term plan. If anything, perhaps, and Jonathan, you might know, on the Senator Paul's increased definition of hemp, that might have a more likely possibility. But again, I don't know.
JD, anything you want to add on the farm bill discussion?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that depending on how the election goes, depending on if either party gets the majority in both the House and the Senate, they're going to want to redraft the farm bill. The farm bill has been delayed and delayed again. We were supposed to have it in 24. There were rumors of early 24 and mid 24, and now, of course, late 24. So I think they're just going to want to look at this with, congressional majority in either party, depending on how the election plays out. And so I think even in lame duck, you may see some congressional members push back and say, hey, our party is going to be in the majority. We want to, take a fresh look at this. And, you never know how this presidential election is going to play out. But I think that's going to play a large role in the consideration of the movement of the farm bill. And again, just to tag on to Chris's point, the Farm Bill has so many other aspects that senators and congressmen want to make sure that they get a good chance to negotiate things like EBT food stamps, et cetera. So our hemp piece is a very small piece of that bill. So I think that's definitely going to play a part in how it plays out.
Thank you. JD, I'll stay with you on the next question, but I know we only have about 15 minutes left. We also have a lot of questions coming online. But JD, talk about how things are playing out in the court system. If you can explain for the audience here, the Circuit Court number 4 and 9 decisions, and when will those cases make it to a Supreme Court, based on what you know?
So the Ninth Circuit, so that was the Delta 8 is legal opinion. It was a part of a trademark case. The judge necessarily had to say whether or not Delta 8 was federally legal so that the trademark protections case could move forward. Famously, Delta 8 is legal. It is a hemp derivative. The Fourth Circuit took that a step further, and effectively said all derivatives and extracts, as long as the base material is hemp, are legal. So now you've got those two cases, and these are at the appellate level. These are just below the Supreme Court. I think sometime over the next couple of years, we could see that end up in front of the Supreme Court. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit because there is a case. Of course, everyone's aware of, I think, Chevron deference and the Chevron doctrine. There is a case coming up potentially by the end of the year. It's the Triton distribution case. It's actually a case on e-cigarettes, but it discusses how the FDA used its authority in rulemaking to, really kind of cause harm to the e-cigarette industry. And so I think that case is one to watch. That will potentially come up in the Supreme Court, and it'll go right at the heart of Chevron doctrine, Chevron deference, agency deference. And I think that'll play a large part in how, congressional members view legislating post-Chevron deference. That's a big conversation in DC right now, how to properly legislate, using agency expertise and industry expertise to draft, lengthy bills that really do consider much of what we used to call rulemaking. So drafting language and legislation that is much more cumbersome and expansive. And I think that's going to be a major congressional conversation. Again, I think hemp plays a small part in that, but that is a big issue in DC right now.
Yeah, and just similar question in terms of the court system at the state level. You had those injunctions in Maryland and Missouri. What happens in the meantime? I mean, in terms of those injunctions, how does the industry operate in those two states, and how long will they be in place in those two states specifically?
Okay, well, I'll start with Maryland. So the Maryland case challenged the passage of their recreational marijuana law, and this is an implementation bill, to be clear. The voters, the constituents of Maryland, in their midterm elections passed recreational marijuana or adult use marijuana. The state of Maryland's legislature came back and voted through an implementation bill. In that implementation bill, it would have greatly advantaged marijuana companies and marijuana dispensaries and really put out of business many of the hemp operators. So the hemp operators in the state of Maryland sued on the basis of antitrust and monopoly law violations. And the judge actually granted them an injunction and agreed with them in his opinion that taking products from one industry and giving it to another industry is a violation of monopolistic or antitrust laws. And so I think that case will continue to move over the next couple of years. I believe they've got a hearing sometime in the next couple of months in Maryland. So the industry in Maryland, sadly, it took a few months for the lawsuit to get in front of a judge, and many hemp operators went out of business. It is really sad to say. I know a few friends of mine who had to close their business or move their business out of state. So it did have dramatic impacts on the market. But now the hemp market seems to be coming back, and I think it's doing pretty well. I think one of the benefits of interstate commerce is a lot of national companies adhere to the strictest states' regulations, right? And so if, let's say, Florida or Tennessee has the strictest regulations in the United States, many national operators will completely change their product offerings to fit those markets, to meet those regulations. And so many of the products that you're seeing in the Maryland market are actually tested 2, 3, 4 times before they make it to the retailer. They're labeled properly. They have QR codes, warning labels, et cetera, to meet some of the strictest regulations in the United States. And, I think kind of the Prop 64 or Prop 65 warning that you see on a lot of products in the United States, because California has the Prop 65 warning. A lot of the national brands just put it on all of their packaging for all over the country. Yeah. Now in Missouri, that was a slightly different case. This was an executive order by the governor mandating the creation of emergency rules. Now, that was challenged on the basis that there was no precursor emergency. There was no emergency for them to file emergency rules under. Now, if you speak to hemp operators in the state of Missouri, there was a lot of commotion, a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace for about 60 days. They did file their court challenge, and the judge and the Attorney General's office kind of came to the table. The Attorney General's office wrote what's effectively a one-pager explaining that their goal is to only go after trademark infringing products, lookalike products, things that might look like Skittles or Oreos or Doritos, things that would infringe on those trademarks, and they do intend to enforce those. And I believe the one-pager that came out of that agency also says they're not going to enforce for a couple of weeks while this court case moves. So I think you're seeing kind of a status quo in hemp industry operations in Missouri, and I think a lot of people are breathing a sigh of relief.
Mm-hmm.
Understood. Thank you. So, Jonathan, this is a question for the three of you, but I'll start with Jonathan in terms of what is the ideal scenario here in terms of what type of regulations you want at the state level, federal level? Is a Wyden bill the blueprint, or do you want more or less? I'll start with you, Jonathan.
Yeah, for us, the Wyden bill is the blueprint. We would love to see federal regulations that age-gate products that provide good manufacturing practices and that have transparent and consistent labeling and packaging. And the Wyden bill, again, it's not perfect. It was just drafted. I'm sure there's going to be changes and improvements to it, but to have that at the federal level, we hope will also help address some of the patchwork that's emerging at the state level, and where states that haven't taken action, that they would follow the federal lead. And we also hope states take a look at what successful programs are going forward. Right now, as JD mentioned, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, other states have very solid regulatory structures that we would love to see other states emulate.
Right. I've read the bill, but it doesn't say anything in terms of distribution, right? Or does it actually say what type of stores would sell these products?
No,
it requires an age gating, and so that would kind of knock out a lot of stores that don't have an inherent age gating system, whether it's through a liquor licensing process or some other. Right. But I think the one thing that we want to amplify here is that the Wyden bill provides a framework for what our industry overwhelmingly is already doing. And so the testing, the age gating, the quality control, the labeling, et cetera, most of the good actors out there are already doing this. And this really just kind of codifies what the industry has been doing from a self-regulatory standpoint. So it's kind of a a backwards way of doing it, in which the regulations are actually kind of going around an industry that's already been doing it anyways, or already has been doing it in the absence of regulation. So from an industry perspective, it's not going to be a dramatic change in protocol for us. It's just really going to be a validation for the industry that's going to allow for more growth.
Right. And using that definition, JD, in the case of age gating, do we assume that smoke shops and vape shops all age gate at the moment?
Now, I can't speak to it being 100%, but the vast majority of smoke shops, vape shops, cigar stores, hemp-only stores are age-gated because the vast majority of the products they sell, like tobacco products or vape products, are already age-gated. Now, I think the age-gating, you run into some interesting conflicts with convenience stores, which is a major market famously for beer and wine distributors. So I think some of the age gating language is fantastic. And I think if you look at the market overall, how it's operating currently, the vast majority would agree with those regulations. But, age gating in vape shops and smoke shops is commonplace. And I don't know a number, but I would have to argue probably 90% of them are age gated.
Okay. Thank you. Look, I'm going to just
the others are getting the others are in danger of getting raided and having their products taken from them. So with every industry, there's bad actors.
Look, I'm going to just read some questions that are coming here online. I guess one question is precisely that one: define a bad actor in this industry. But again, it's very vague and broad, I know. But Jonathan, if you want to answer that, but brief answers on these questions.
Sure. Bad actors are those that are not taking the steps to quality control, that manufacturing products that aren't safe for consumption. Bad actors are the ones that are targeting kids in their marketing or in their sales, or otherwise deceiving people by counterfeiting other products in the marketplace. These are the bad actors, are a very small minority of the industry, but they're the ones that generally, when politicians are trying to ban or restrict hemp, they pick up these products and show them off. And we, the three, our organizations and others in the space, take very due care to promote the good actors in the space.
Chris, and fundamentally, when this industry grows, and it is growing, bad actors are going to get pulled out for bad quality control, but also through the regulatory supply chain. We work with legacy liquor stores and grocery chains and legacy distributors that have been in, the community for, sometimes 100 years. They're not going to tolerate bad products. They're not going to tolerate suspicious actors. And so I think, that's one of the other things to recognize is that, when you're going to reputable stores and you're working with reputable distributors, you're going to find an increase in improvement in quality control and fewer of those bad actors slipping by, because it just can't happen. Their reputations are on the line, and they're not going to let that happen. It's, as Jonathan mentioned, the ones that are, and we've seen this before where there's, suspicious packaging or not enough information and lack of testing, et cetera. Those guys are going to evaporate over time.
Thank you, Chris. One question for you here online. I'm going to read it for you. Regarding the future of hemp beverages, do you think hemp beverages will need to be produced under FDA GMP regulations? Do you think they will be subjected to stability and safety testing? Should a beverage producer be concerned with nano or other absorption technology in beverages? I know there's a lot there, but
no, absolutely. Well, beverage is hard to make. It's there's whether it's GMP is certified or GMP equivalent. I think that's going to remain to be seen, depending on if it's FDA or TTB that's taking the lead on that kind of a protocol. But we do know that these beverages are already made in high quality certified facilities. In terms of the emulsions and all the other aspects of what goes into the can, yeah, that absolutely needs to be done. Putting stuff in a can and making sure it's self-stable is a relatively difficult process, and it's not the kind of thing that you can just take lightly and hope that it happens. I think everybody's got an example of an exploding can that's happened in a warehouse or whatever as a result of poor manufacturing. So, in short, I think that the regulations are going to be tight, and they should be, because beverage manufacturing requires that significant attention to detail.
Thank you. JD, one question for you. I mean, do you see a scenario where if THC cannabis were to be descheduled in the future, that both industries, hemp derivatives and cannabis, could be regulated under the same framework?
Yeah. I think what's relevant here, and I'm going to take it back to what I said earlier. We are coming out of a 100-year prohibition. If we disadvantage the small businesses in favor of large corporate interests, the black market will never go away. For 100 years in the United States, consumers have risked life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to attain these products. If we deschedule these products, there needs to be people, small businesses in every market in the United States. There needs to be mass market proliferation and consumer access. If you don't meet consumer access demands, there will inevitably and always be a black market, which is where the vast majority of these unsafe products, these Chinese packages that look like Doritos and Skittles, that's where they're coming from. These bad actors are not licensed hemp manufacturers. These are people from the black market in California and in other states shipping these products all across the United States. So yes, I would say if it were to be descheduled, we will need a seat at the table for the smallest businesses. There are so many communities in the United States that see heroin problems and fentanyl problems and methamphetamine problems, and those communities cannot be forgotten about. Those communities need access to some of these products as a healthier alternative to some of the black market drugs or the opioids that they're being prescribed. We have to fight for everyone to have a seat at this table to meet the massive amounts of consumer demand. There was a study or a recent study that just came out that shows people are smoking more marijuana on a daily basis than they are drinking alcohol in the United States. Mm-hmm. This market is severely underestimated. It is absolutely humongous, and we have to prioritize consumer access. And the only way to do that is to give small businesses a voice and a seat at that table.
So on that point, Jonathan, I know we're almost out of time, Jonathan, but will it make sense for both industries to work and lobby together in the future, or that's just not possible at the moment?
You know, that's the ideal. And as the last several months have shown, there are more and more marijuana companies that are getting into the hemp space that are recognizing that we shouldn't be adversaries and for economic reasons. So I'm hopeful that that trend continues. But you know, until then, as long as there are folks out there who are trying to wreak havoc and ban our products, we're going to be fighting them tooth and nail, whether it's Governor Newsom in California or the Mary Miller Amendment in DC.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Look, I want to ask each one of you to make some closing remarks here, but I very much appreciate your time, great insights and color here for our audience. JD, as you answer, and if you can, I'm going to read a question here that came online. Normally I won't read it, but maybe you want to address it. Someone is saying most members in your organization primarily sell synthetic cannabinoid products, including lung-toxic THCO, cannabinoid acetate. I mean, I'm sorry to bring that up. Someone is asking, but in your closing remarks, JD, you might want to address that. I'll start with you, JD.
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry, I didn't.
I'm gonna read it back to you, but I guess I'll move to Jonathan for closing remarks, but I'll come back to you. Jonathan, any closing remarks here?
I thank you for joining us. If folks want to keep in touch with what's happening on a day-to-day basis, come join us at the Roundtable, and our website is hempsupporter.com. Sign up for a free email, or you can join us as a member if you're interested. We'd love to have your support.
Right. Thank you, Jonathan. So JD, again, the idea here is for you to use this time, as you see fit. Someone is saying that most of your members in your organization primarily sell what they're describing here as synthetic cannabinoid products, including lung-toxic THCO cannabinoid acetate.
Got it. So the DEA in 2023 classified THCO as a synthetic drug. The vast majority of the THCO that was ever produced is off of the market. Okay. Members of my organization and other hemp business owners from all around the United States discontinued the sale of THCO back in 2023. Now, to chastise small businesses who are participating in an emerging market where hundreds of cannabinoids are being identified in real time, because again, we're coming out of a 100-year prohibition. chastising American innovationism and saying that people are producing bad products. We are learning as we're going. We are building the plane as we are flying, and we are actively defending people's rights to have access to these hemp derivatives. We need to, again, consider the small businesses, American innovationism, and the rights of people to try these products under a federally legal environment. Right. So if you would, please go to myhealthyusa.org. Consider joining our association if you're a business in the hemp space. We are constantly putting out news articles and information on what's happening around the United States. But yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity, Pablo. And
Sure.
It's been a real pleasure to sit next to two of my idols. I love these guys, and I really do appreciate everything they're doing.
Okay. Thank you. Chris, closing remarks.
Sure. HempBeverageAlliance.org if you want to join up with us. I'm going to be at the National Beer Wholesalers Association trade show in about 6 hours. If anybody's in the beer industry and wants to meet up, I'll be there. I'll be at Benzinga. I guess, are we all going to Benzinga? But I'll be at Benzinga in Chicago if anybody wants to meet up and chat there.
Okay. A big thank you to our speakers here and to everyone that joined today. Everyone have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Good seeing you guys.